All right, welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. What's up, Horace?
Nothing much, man. What's up with you?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Busy time for you? Yeah, housing market keeping you busy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heated market right now, man.
It's absolutely nuts.
That's cool.
Absolutely
I don't
nuts.
know how people are getting this money, but they are.
Well, let's talk about that. I think what you realize about COVID-19 is that it's hit a lot of the lower income workers, like
Yeah.
people who have jobs at restaurants, fast food joints, etc. A lot of the people who had office jobs, they've been relatively okay. If anything, they've saved money, and it looks like they're buying houses now.
Yeah. I think I've saved a lot of money, actually, because I don't go out. So
Yeah,
where am I going to?
yeah. You don't go to restaurants,
Yeah.
you don't commute,
Yeah.
all that stuff. All right, so I thought for this week's podcast, we'd cover a bit of a controversial issue. Well, it's not controversial, but it's been a lot in the current discussion. Just as, stuff happened in the U.S., in Canada as well.
Yeah.
And that is just covering the issue of race. And I wanted to address race and the workplace, right? So if I wanted to cover the following questions. Do you think race affects your success? Number 2, do you have any racial biases or biases? 3, will human beings ever stop being racist?
Yeah.
Just generally. And then number 4, how can society make the workplace and just society in general more inclusive? So number 1, do you think race has affected your success? Like, let's say you're a South Asian male. I'm a South Asian male as well. Do you think your race has affected your success?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, so why do you say that? Why do you say that? Because a lot of people will be like, no, we're the land of the opportunity and freedom. Everybody can be successful here.
Yeah.
Why do you say that race has certainly had an effect on your success?
So I want to split this into a few different things.
Let's take our time here because this is controversial. So take your time.
So
whatever time you need.
So as much as I would say it has affected my success, is it because people were racist around me? No, not really.
Yeah.
My thing is, and I don't know, maybe this is what I feel. It probably applies to a lot of people, is that, for example, whether you're South Asian, whether you're wherever you're from, right? If you're from a minority, like us in Canada, where the majority is something else, right? It's just that when you're, like, for example, looking for a job, right? Typically, and I'll give you my own thing. When I'm looking to hire somebody, I'm looking for a few things. Yeah. A lot of these things are not based off of, like, the objective stuff is there. Okay, yeah, what's the GPA? Are they well written, well spoken? Okay, got that done. Okay. So now once that is done, a large portion of at least me hiring is the emotional side. Do I trust this person, right? Do I trust this person to do the work? Do I trust this person to understand what I'm saying? Do I trust this person for a bunch of, like, just a lot of trust involved in getting the work done? Yeah. And then outside of that, it's like, how relatable is this individual, right? Because you want to, like, it's just normal. Can I relate to this person at any level outside of work? Now, when I am trying to understand all those things, I have a certain list in my mind, right? I'm going to naturally be able to see that list within individuals that may have a same or similar background as myself. You get what I mean? So if I'm looking at, like, A, B, and C to determine trust, I will be better able to see A, B, and C within individuals from the same culture as me. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I'm racist against everybody else. It's just that I'm ignorant and I fail to see that trust can be manifested or be shown in different ways in different cultures. Yeah. But even if I am if aware of that, then it's another step to understand how to figure out what that trust is. Right. You know what I mean? So it's a very tricky situation. So I'm not necessarily saying that you should just not do anything with that, but definitely if I'm going for an interview, I'm going to be able to, like, show what trust is based on how I was raised, my background, right? I could have lived in Canada my entire life, but my parents definitely have an influence on me, and they did not grow up in Canada, right? So they're going to show trust in a different way.
Yeah.
And so when I'm going to interview the other person, if they don't understand my background, they're not going to know the cues within my personality to point out that trust or hard work or diligence or IQ or whatever.
Yeah.
They may mistake that into something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give one good example.
Yeah.
I feel like in our culture, right, you're not supposed to like talk back or something. Shouldn't like
South Asian culture, right? Yeah.
All right, so you should just if you're intelligent, you just say
Yeah,
yes.
you be obedient.
Yeah,
you just
obedient,
obey
yeah.
and shut up.
But if you
No, that's absolutely true. Into the South Asian culture, that's respect, right? Yeah, you just shut up and listen.
But
you
dude,
don't
if you
talk
did that in
back.
an interview, they'd think you're an idiot, right?
Yeah, no,
They'll think there's
and
something
at
wrong
work
with
as
you.
well.
This guy can seek.
Yes. And I've learned that at work as well. Like, for example, in the South Asian culture, there is a very high respect towards authority, right?
Yeah.
So if you're my boss, you are my boss. You command me what to do, and I don't become your friend. But in the workplace in Canada, in Toronto, North America, no, you've become friends with your boss's boss, whatever it is, you develop relationships.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different way than how traditional South Asian cultures are.
South Asian culture is like you have to show deference.
Yeah,
right?
deference and respect.
Yeah.
There's a lot of respect towards authority and stuff like that.
And that has to be seen in body language
Yeah.
and tone and
Yeah,
whatever.
and tone, etc.
Not that you don't show respect here, but there's different boundaries.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And now, if for example you're showing deference, right, the other person might mistake it as this guy's just being distant.
Yeah.
You know. So whose fault is that? Correct. Right. Yeah. It's not anyone's fault. It's just a miscommunication in culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
So in that sense, definitely, you're going to have, like, your race definitely has an effect. Culture has an effect on your progression in career and life and wherever. Yeah.
On this question, so does race affect your success? I'd say two things. Number one, I'd say I have never been become the victim of something racist, like a racial slur or something like that. Yeah. That's not to say that people who are South Asian haven't experienced that. Yeah. They definitely have. There are plenty of instances. Just do a Google search and you'll see plenty of instances where people who are of a South Asian background or Muslim or whatever it is have been victims of racial slurs or insults, etc. So that's number one. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. But number two, what I would say is the way sometimes I look at this question and say, if I wasn't South Asian, and let's say I was the dominant race, so white Caucasian, would life have been easier? And I don't know for sure, so I'm not going to say it definitely is, but my gut says, yeah, it might have been slightly easier, right? Yeah. To just get up, work through my ranks, to just get along with people a bit better, to just get along with decision makers, because let's be honest, a lot of the decision makers, and this is well known in corporate Canada, that a lot of like the C-suite, the executive tends to be white male Caucasian. Women who are white Caucasian have a problem, right? There is a gender disparity for that reason. But yeah, we're working on it as a society, but it's still definitely an issue. And it would have been easier had I been, I think white Caucasian. My success path would have been a bit smoother and easier. And what I would say is that it's not that people are overtly racist when you're applying for a job or a position, etc. If you've, like, let's say I submit my resume for a job, if you are the other person on the other side, and let's say you are a racist, right? You've probably screened me out, and I never even knew as an applicant whether or not why my application got thrown out. I don't know. You could have been a racist idiot, but I don't know because I got rejected from that job, so I don't know that you were racist, right? Yeah. That's the type of racism which is sort of hidden. It's never overt in life. It's always a type of racism that is sort of like under the pillow or under the bed, right? I'm a racist like HR person. I don't like the way your name is or the way it's spelled or who you are or your background. I'll just reject you. And I, as an applicant, would have never known that I was rejected for that reason. Yeah. So that's one example. The other thing I'd say is that the other form of like barrier that you see in the workplace sometimes is it's not the workplace, but it's how you become friends with your coworkers. And that tends to be the issue around after work events, drinking, etc. Now, you and I are Muslims, so we don't drink, right? I've never, chosen to drink at all. And what you sometimes see is that your lack of participating in that activity, sometimes, people are like, oh, well, why aren't you doing this? Why is this weird? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's an unsaid type of emotion or feeling, right? Now, I've never had an issue with this. I used to have an issue with it when I was earlier on in my career. I think I used to have a harder time, or I used to be like, oh, I just said I don't drink. Oh, this person's going to think I'm an idiot. Now I don't give a damn. It's very different now. But yeah, I think early on in your career, it's a little tough. It's not easy to say no. And sometimes you're like in a bit of an awkward situation, or like, oh, okay, well, I guess
in order for you to handle that situation, you really have to be confident in who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And then confident enough to know why you're doing or not doing something.
Yeah.
And then also empathizing with the other person instead of making them another.
Yeah.
You empathize with them to see why they're doing it, not doing it, and explain your side, and they can explain theirs.
Yeah.
And then I feel like when I was younger, there was that mindset, but as you get older,
you stop giving a damn.
You don't give a damn, but I also like explain it to everybody, right?
Yeah,
like why I'm not.
Yeah. And bless you. The other thing is, I tend to think as you get older as well, you tend to be able to, like, let's say if I say I don't drink and the other person looks at you weird, you're able to diffuse the situation better as you get older. You're like, oh, let's talk about this, or let's not be such, so it doesn't need to be so weird. Let's talk about something else we have in common, right? You tend to be able to diffuse the situation better as you get older because you know how to handle
you've been a lot of the enough times.
Yeah, a lot of those situations. So I'd say, conclusion towards this question, really, for me, I don't know for you, do you think life would be easier if you weren't South Asian? Let's say you were white Caucasian. Would life or your success be
definitely.
different?
I think it would be easier.
It would be different.
It would be, it would be different. Not definitely easier. Like, again, it's not like once you become, like, white, you're...
Life is easy. No. And let's be honest. I just want to make this clear to our viewers and listeners. I'm not saying I am embarrassed to be a South Asian man. I'm absolutely, I wouldn't change a single thing about the way I am. Not a single thing.
We don't want to be white. We're just asking.
We're just saying that life would be different. Yes, it would be very different. It'd be different if I was black as well. It'd be very different, man. It'd be completely different. So that's what we're saying at the end of the day. I guess let's move on to question number 2 then. Do you have racial biases?
Man.
Or let me answer this question first. So while you think about it. I'd say, I think no one on earth can say they don't have racial biases. That's a complete lie. If you say you do not have racial biases, what you can do, I think, in life is work to eradicate them in your head and be like, okay, this is a bias I have. Okay. Let me make sure that I'm controlling it. Because let's be honest, one of the things that's quite interesting about Western culture and just being in North America is that eventually you slowly, first of all, there's the favoritism of like, I'm a South Asian male, I get along with other South Asian people. There's definitely that. Yeah. But slowly, and it's funny, and you notice this happen at some point in your life, you tend to discriminate your own race in North America. Do you know what I mean? And then that becomes in the sense that, let's say I'm a South Asian male. Let's say I'm more Canadian because I speak a certain way or I have a certain lifestyle. I meet someone else who's South Asian, and let's say they just came from India. They have different manners and a different culture and a different way of integrating. I'm like, whoa, this person isn't like me, And it's like this, there is even sometimes racial biases within the same culture. And that's why this topic is so complex. Yeah. Because it's not just racism against just different races, right? Like, you're white, I'm black, blah, 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 and I'm racist against you, and I don't like you because of the way you are. There's also racism within a culture. It's like, you're this class, and I'm this class, therefore we're not the same, and I look down upon you.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know if I have racial biases.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, this is a very heavy
Sorry,
question.
I covered a lot there, but yeah, no, it is definitely, it's definitely a tough topic.
I would say, you know what, the way I was raised was a little stupid. Like, my parents didn't necessarily tell me a lot of what was going on in the world in terms of races.
Yeah.
I'd have questions and I wouldn't get like complete answers, but like that's just how it was. And so a lot of it I navigated in my adult life. And I do feel like, for example, biases for cultures, they can be good and they can be bad. Okay?
Yeah.
Thing is every culture is different. They're not the same. If they're the same, it'd be one culture, right? So inherently, every culture, every group of people, every individual, right, has their own strengths and weaknesses. And it's important not to turn a blind eye to it, right? If we go from, hey, everybody from here does this and therefore they're bad, to, hey, we're not looking at anything now, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just a different type of ignorance.
Yeah.
You swang from one side to the other side, right? You're just a pendulum. You're not really, there's no center.
Yeah.
Right? It's erratic. It's not intellectual. It's not intelligent. There's no EQ in that. There's nothing. Right? I feel like it's important to understand the positives and the negatives of different cultures. And then even in an organization, all of that could actually help you grow, right?
Yeah.
Because culture and person, right? Everybody's going to be contributing different things, and we need different things, different types of people for an organization to grow. And I keep bringing this back to a business, but you definitely need that. That's why more and more, like, it's a trend to just like have potential employees take tests, right?
Yeah.
To figure out what's your strength, what's your weakness, right? You and me may be from the same part of the world, but we're very different people. Even with that, we needed to take to understand what our strengths and weaknesses are, where we would excel. It's very different.
Yeah.
So I think it's more important to understand and I don't believe in like, oh my God, it's all about coming together and we're all the same. No, we're not the same.
No,
we're
not
not
the same.
We are same in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But we also should embrace our differences in a pluralistic kind of perspective, where I can have my way, you could have your way, and we can accept one another or learn to live with one another.
Yeah.
You know? And that's completely fine.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the one thing whenever you talk about race and stuff like that, when people are being racist and I hear about someone who's being racist, I'm like, look, I don't know, whether you're South Asian and you think, oh, other people's way of living is completely stupid, or you're white and you think everybody should just be white. Imagine if the entire world was just like one culture, all South Asian.
Yeah.
We had butter chicken everywhere you went in the world. That world, to be honest, Horace, would be a pretty boring world, right? Yeah. I like the fact that I can go to Indonesia and taste a different dish and a different look at a different culture. I go to Brazil and it's completely different. Dude, that's wicked. That's absolutely amazing. That variety in the world is amazing, right? Imagine you as a racist. If the world was just one race, it would kind of suck. I'm not sure most racists would want to live in that world. That is completely just one race. It would suck.
Oh, 100%. I definitely do think butter chicken would not be good all the time. But I mean, okay, we've never gotten religious in this podcast.
No,
right?
we've left religion out of this.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we haven't kept it a secret either that both of us are Muslim, right? Yeah. And there is a in the Quran, right? And not to paraphrase, like the text says that God says that He could have made everybody the same, but He didn't, so that we can know one another. Yeah,
right? Explore different cultures.
Not to get into the religious side, but I feel like
that. No, you're using that, in the proper context.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not.
No need to excuse yourself. No need to excuse.
It's not to. I mean, I don't want to get from one controversial topic to another one, man. But it's like the sentiment is to get to know one another, understand one another. Everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's for us to understand what the other person's strengths are, as opposed to just looking at their weakness.
Right. The one thing I would say, though, I know I call this a controversial topic, but dude, you know what? This is becoming part of today's fabric, like today's culture, the conversation around the workplace, etc. I think for too long, a lot of these topics have been shoved under the rug, and they should be brought out and discussed, right? Yeah. It's not an easy subject to discuss, and we're trying to tread this, tiptoeing around it. It's a tough subject. Yeah. But I think it should be discussed, and you shouldn't shy away from discussing some of these tough topics. I'll go to our third question, which is, will human beings ever stop being racist? In your opinion, what do you think?
I think it's possible. Will it happen? God knows, man.
Yeah. On this question, human racism has existed since, I think, like the dawn of mankind. Yeah. I think if you go back to, if you go back to biblical scripture, the Quran, etc. Cain and Abel killed, didn't one kill his brother because he was jealous or something like that? And then you come to today's world, you look at like what's happening in the US just against the racism against people who are black. A lot of people who are from the black community are saying nothing's changed since the 1960s to now. It's the same. And I would agree, man. Human beings in general, it's so hard to change biases. Yeah. And like I said earlier as well, I don't think you can change those biases, but you can certainly be more aware of them and learn to be like, here's where I'm being biased. Let me control it, or let me change what I'm doing. And again, talk about it. Talk about this topic. It is controversial, but it needs to be discussed and addressed. It's not something that you should shy away from. Because again, we all have these biases. We all grow in homes where your mom, your dad, your brothers are all the same culture and color, right? And when you go outside, you don't know how to deal with people who are slightly different with you. You need to be able to be, to sort of rein yourself in and know that you need to be conscious of the biases that you have.
No, yeah, 100%. I agree.
Yeah. Anything else to say?
I don't know.
Well, yeah. What do you think? Will human beings ever stop being racist? Like, what are you going to teach your kids about race?
I mean, I'm definitely going to let them know that there's different people from different places. I'm not going to teach them how to hate people.
Yeah.
But I want them to go and not turn a blind eye to it, and maybe be more curious about like what's going on in the world and understanding why people do the way they do it.
Yeah.
And without necessarily letting go their own principles, right? Having your own principles doesn't mean that you're ignorant and it's everybody else's, right? But moving to what you said about, for example, black people, and their kind of strife in the States, there's a lot of struggle going on throughout the world, right?
Yeah.
So within the black community, they should be there. It's public, which is a good thing, right? That's an advantage that they have, but doesn't mean that like it's not existent somewhere else. I do feel in order to answer this race question, especially for example in the black community, communities need to think about how to create their own economies. This is about I'm not trying to advocate to close yourself off.
Yeah.
But you do need. We live in an economic world, and like capital has a voice.
It
you don't have
does.
capital, you don't have voice.
No, it does.
And in order for you to do that, you need to build your own economies. You can't wait for handouts. You can't wait for somebody else to do something. You need to build your own economies, your own societies, and dictate your own rules. If you are not, as crazy as it may sound, if you're not winning in the game that you're playing, start your own game. That doesn't mean to be destructive. I'm not saying to break laws or destroy stuff. Mm-hmm. But in order for people to kind of understand that they need to build a voice, they need to think multi-generationally. Yeah. How do we build our own systems? Which is how actually the black community got out of slavery. Because if everybody thought about them at that moment, right?
The very individualistic type of mindset.
They wouldn't be where they are today because there's a lot of people who sacrificed their lives for them to get that freedom.
Absolutely.
And I feel like now maybe, I don't know the stripes of the community completely, but it's been a bit lost, right? It's about now, it's like if you can harness that same thing, because in slavery, the thing is people live with dignity. You can live with dignity even if you're enslaved. Right, because you're a human being, you have a soul, right, and you can value that, and you can potentially live without dignity even if you're quote unquote free. Yeah. So it's about bringing that dignity to yourself in all of the communities, not just a black community, the South Asian community, any enslaved community, any community that feels like it's being marginalized. Bring back the dignity to your own existence and really start building your own communities and be confident in who you are, while accepting everybody else.
Yeah. I'd go back to this. You're talking about community. This point I made about interracial racism. It's like racism within the same race. Yeah. Sometimes, whether it's due to socioeconomic class, you're poor, I'm rich, whatever. But it's just like racism in the same class. And sometimes I think about, how it is in North America. Some of the feelings that you sometimes have is like, let's say someone who's born in Canada versus someone who's immigrated. Sometimes that person who's born in Canada, they might say, oh, you know what? I'm more Canadian, whatever the hell that means, than you are. Therefore, I look down upon you. And I think that's quite dangerous. And I don't know why people feel like that. It's that, oh, I am more, I don't know, of the whatever an ideal Canadian is. And sometimes that ideal Canadian in someone's mind means someone that acts more Caucasian and likes hockey, blah, 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 and is more like talks like this, with a certain accent. That type of interracial racism, I think it's really dangerous as well. Because then you look down upon people who are just like you and who, to be honest, you should be forming bonds together to, advocate for equality and being treated equally in the workplace, etc., as opposed to turning against each other and being racist towards each other, right? Because you're like, I'm more accepted in this society than you are, so I am like better off than you are.
I feel like
when you're not really, because you're still an outsider sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, with South Asians, sometimes they start affiliating with a black community or something just to separate themselves from South Asians.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that happens in other communities, but it does happen in the South Asian community, and I do feel that
you overcompensate for what you have. You either become
you're trying to distance yourself from something.
Yeah. You're trying to become like, oh, I'm like this culture. I'm more like I don't know, white Caucasian, and I like this. But
that's also just like just a reaction, right? You're a pendulum swinging.
Yeah,
you have no center.
Yeah.
So if you have a center, you're going to know who you are, and you lift people.
Yeah.
You don't, and you know what? Maybe they don't need to be lifted. Maybe you need to be lifted, right?
True.
Just because they have an accent doesn't mean they have nothing to offer.
Yeah,
You're not they're not like, substandard or something, right?
Yeah.
They just don't, their first language is different.
Yeah.
And their way of thinking is different.
Yeah.
Now let's go see what that is. How is it different, right? There's a lot of values that, like, you know what? In South Asian communities, one of the things was there's always joint families, right? I mean, you go back home, there's the people, like your parents are always living with you, right? Or often enough, most of the time. Over in the West, there wasn't, right? And it was kind of looked down upon, too, to be living joint families. But that also had to do with, like, economic conditions. Now you're seeing more and more everybody just living together, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like the West was any different. If you go back 50, 100 years ago, there was tons of joint families. That's how you survived.
Yeah.
You survived by helping one another, right? And now by living together, even if it's for economic purposes, you're building a strong culture inside your house instead of atomizing your existence by just it's me and my wife living together in a house, and then there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's the overwhelming like feeling, and you have no connection with anybody else in your community, you don't even have a proper connection with your neighbors. You see them, like, you wave to them like when you're taking out the trash, and that's it, right? Like, that's not a way to live your life. So I feel like other communities are definitely doing things better than Canadians. And it's about bringing all of that in. Having said that, I do appreciate Canada a lot, because I think, especially in Toronto, it's one of the best places where you see so many cultures coming together.
Absolutely. Yo, 100%. 100%.
There's so, like, how everybody embraces one another. I don't see it anywhere else.
Yeah.
The real, I guess, love that you feel, right? Being from different cultures and people experiencing one another, I don't think you see that anywhere else in the world, man.
Yeah. And I'd say let's end it there. So I was going to talk about how society can make the workplace inclusive, but where do you go from here? Just race relations otherwise? I mean, I would say, Toronto's a fantastic example. So many cultures, so many races, so much different food and culture. It's absolutely amazing. There's such a positive aspect to having different cultures and races in a city, and just, for your economic future as well. Just the diversity of thought, of thinking, of approach makes your society so much richer than it would be if it was just just one race.
Dude, I mean, just one more thing. I remember I moved to the States for law school, right?
Yeah.
I was in New York City, and I was like, Long Island, New York City area, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, I find that Long Island, at least, I was miserable, man. Like, there wasn't that many cultures. There's only one culture, and everything else was a take on whatever that culture was, with the dominant culture. Right? Over here, you go to different parts of the city, you get like pretty genuine food from that area.
Yeah. No, so true. Yeah, so I think, how do we end this? So the way I think we should end this is really, like, racism is definitely an issue. It should be talked about. It's a tough topic, but we should discuss it. We don't push these issues under the rug anymore. It should be out to the forefront and have these tough discussions. And I'd say everyone has a bias, and that's totally okay. But I think the first thing you need to do is just acknowledge the bias that you have and try to work as hard as you can to overcome it and see a different perspective.
I agree.
All right, we'll end it there.
Yep.
All right.
Good.
Okay. See you guys on the next one.
Take care.
Take care.